everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. Today we're going to do some inlay and we're going to make something called a butterfly. Now if you're not familiar with the word butterfly in woodworking terms, what it refers to is a little piece of wood that's used to hold a larger piece together. And what we mean by that is when you're working with large boards, sometimes these boards will split depending on how much moisture content they are and the environment that they're being kept in. Wood will tend to split, especially wide boards. Now, woodworkers years ago devised something called a butterfly that can be inlaid into the board that helps to prevent that board from splitting apart. And this is what a butterfly looks like. It's just a little sort of a wedge-shaped two inverted tripods together, or two inverted pyramids together, and it's used against the grain so that it prevents the wood from pulling apart. And today we're going to be using a router to inlay a butterfly. Now for our technique today, we're actually going to be using a router to route out the area where the butterfly will be inserted into. And we're going to be using a special tool to do that. In a second, I'm going to zoom in to the very center of this router. This is a router and it's just turned on end so you can see the very base. Now this base that's installed in this router, this is a collar, a brass collar around here, and there's another collar that actually fits on top of it. And this brass collar that fits on top of it is exactly 1/8 of an inch, which is the size of the diameter of the bit that we're using. So in order to make our butterfly, the first thing we do to cut the hole that the butterfly is going to go in is we insert this little thick brass washer on the end, and then we will set up and cut the hole for the butterfly. When we get finished cutting the hole, we're going to go to another piece of wood and we're going to remove this thick brass washer, and we will cut out the actual butterfly, the inlay part that will go into the butterfly hole. And you'll see that as we go along. Now there is a little bit of prep work that you need to do before you can start making the butterfly. And what you'll need to do is to make a template, a guide that router brass part that we showed you is going to use as a guide for cutting the hole and for cutting the butterfly with. Now this is the finished template that I've used, and it also in my case needs to be about 3/8 of an inch thick, because that's how deep that little washer is on the end of the router. So there's my template, but let me show you how I got to this template. First of all, you need something like a cereal box cardboard, something to work with that's a little bit rigid. And basically you just draw out the size of the butterfly that you want, and I just picked a nominal size, and this was my guide that I used to draw the template, and then I cut it out of that hardwood. So pretty simple. I'm not going to go through this easy stuff with you. You can figure this out. It's easy. Now we're going to set up the router and actually start cutting the hole now that you've seen the template and how the system is going to work. Okay, I've set the depth, and you can see right there, just barely poking out about 3/16 of an inch. That is how much is going to cut into the wood. And on this router, I have set the stop, and there's the stop. So when the plunger or when the router plunges, that nut will stop when it hits that block right there. And that will give me the depth that I need. Okay, let's get started. Okay, there's the hole for our butterfly, and you can see there's still a few nubs in there. I'm just going to clean those out with a chisel, and you'll actually notice that the corners are just slightly rounded. I'm actually going to just take a little bit of those and just square those off a tiny bit as well. We'll have a look at that when I'm done. Okay, there's the hole for the butterfly, and it's all cleaned out. The bottom's all nice and flat, and I actually cleaned up the edges or the corners, so there's, instead of having a tiny bit of round in there, they're actually nice and sharp. Now we need to cut the insert to go in there. Now the first thing, as I said before, this little brass washer needs to come off here, and it's just on by friction. So there it is. There you can see it. That's off. Now we're going to be using this to cut the insert to go into that. Now we're using the same template as we did to cut the hole. Now we're going to use the same template, and now we're just going to make one pass around the outside of this butterfly, and that's what we'll use to make the butterfly that will fit in the hole that we just made in the other piece of wood. Okay, I've made two passes, and now there you can see the outline, and now what we need to do is to go to the table saw, and we're actually going to cut this out, and we'll show you how that happens. Okay, there's a close-up of our butterfly, and what we're going to do, you can see the depth there. What we're actually going to do is we're going to run this through the table saw, and we're going to cut right along that line there, and this butterfly will actually just fall off, and then we can position it into our receptacle on the board that we cut. Okay, I've already set the depth and the width. I'm just going to go ahead now and cut that butterfly, and that should just flop onto the table. Okay, there's our butterfly, It's a little rough on the edges. I'm just going to take a little bit of sandpaper and just clean the edges up a little bit, and then we'll try that and see how that fits. Okay, there's our butterfly, and there's the hole that we made with the template. And that's how easy it is to make a butterfly with that Freud router set, that Freud inlay set. There's of course inlay sets for various other routers, and they all work the same, using the same basic method. But you can make butterflies, you can make any kind of shape that you want, and simply by moving and inserting and replacing that big brass washer that we showed you, you can make these things to fit perfectly any shape and size that you want, whatever you want. Typically on an inlay like this, now I would glue this into this board and wait overnight, and then the next day I would lightly plane this, because I think you can see that this is sitting a little bit proud of the board. And we want to do that on purpose so that we can plane this down and then give a final sanding so that it all sits smoothly on top. And that's actually a perfect fit. There is not a gap anywhere there, or a very, very hairline crack. Compared to doing this by hand, this is a much quicker and a much more accurate method. So that's all it takes to make very good looking, very easy to work with inlays using a router inlay kit. And of course those inlay kits are available for a variety of routers. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching, and please visit our website for more tips, tricks, videos, and information. And be sure to visit our forums where you can put in your suggestions and ideas and maybe help out some of the other woodworkers that could use your expertise as well. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web.